In this section, we will continue to be looking at how to make textures that are seamless to add to our SketchUp models. Let's go now to another SketchUp project, fabric project, and let's do bench. So we're assuming we're going to put this bench here, and we're going to make a bench for our client and the fabric on the bench and so forth. So we're going to go ahead and take a look what the client is looking for. Let's say they saw this material and this wood here, and they said, you know what, I would like to have a bench with just those materials and woods. So went out, took a photograph of this, and now we're going to use this photograph to create our seamless textures. Switching to Photoshop, File, Open, and under the fabric project, there is the top JPEG. So open that up. We need to straighten this particular view out. So I'm going to use the crop tool, the perspective crop tool. And I'm just going to do a rectangle, and I'm just going to zoom up a little bit here. So I'm going to go first to the corners of this piece, because we've got nice sharp corners where the wood is, and so we'll get the good perspective on it. However, I notice there's a little shadow spot right here. So I'm just going to grab it from here, from the middle. If you see my cursor becomes two-sided arrow, click and drag down a little ways. I will not worry about that. Same here, I'm going to go up just a little ways too, because there's a little bit going on down there. Right-click, crop. We'll use the same technique as before onto this wood texture to create a seamless texture. Image size, and we see that's 360 by 400. So let's say maybe what? 160 by 200. So we go filter, other, offset, 160 by 200, I guess. And we can now see what we need to worry about. We have to worry about this area and this area here. I will start with the spot healing brush here. And maybe make it a little bit less, not 50, but maybe like a 20 or something. And then, see what this is going to do for us. Wiggling again as before. So I think that did pretty well. What I want to do now is maybe do some of the clone stamping here and here, and maybe not at 100%, maybe like at 40%. So that the wood grain is not totally lost. It's very simple, very smooth kind of wood. So and there's not much variation. It's not like a strong oak or anything, but I'm just kind of hit here. So I noticed there was some lightness here. So I've got some of this darker one. I'm kind of grabbing. I'm just going to go up and down vertical, right? Because the grain here is vertical. This looks pretty good, but I'll just kind of maybe grab some of that down here, right? This one looks pretty good. Just kind of drag this down a little ways, yeah? And then this one, the same thing as we go here. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's do filter, offset again. There's a little bit here going on. So I always do filter 2 or 3 times just to make sure. I'm just going to use the clone stamp on this. It'll be all right. But I do want to keep. I don't mind this line because larger pieces of wood are put together to create this, right? I mean, so we've got it very simple, but at the same time, I'm not too concerned that the wood might have some sort of lines in it that will tip us off that it's vertical. So the grain orientation is definitely vertical in this piece. I think we're good. I think we're good here. All right. So let's go ahead and save it. File, save as. I'm going to call it wood, and I'm going to put it in the same folder. Looks good. All right. Let's switch over to the model. And then for the model, I'm going to just see what we've got here. So we've got just straight material here, but we've got these components. So I'm going to take a look at that as I put it together. File, import, and I'm going to go to my fabric project folder. There's wood right there as a texture, import, And I'll just kind of go click here and just make it look like, I guess, the wood grain we expect to see. All right. So now whenever you put a material on a piece, kind of think about how they're going to construct it. Would the wood grain really go in that direction? The answer is no. Not if they make it out of a piece of wood. It'll go the long ways probably. I don't think they'd put it vertically like this. So right click, texture position, and if you right click on this, you can rotate 90 degrees, and that is more the wood grain I expect to see in a project like this. At this point, you can right click, texture position, and kind of play around with where you'd like that piece to be mostly. And I think this is good. Then go ahead, now that we've got the right size, I'll just go ahead and use the paint bucket tool. I'm going to hold down the Alt key to make an eyedropper, or click on the eyedropper over here, and then I will go ahead and paint the other surfaces and the bottom. There you go. That looks pretty good. Now for the legs, I would go ahead and also paint it, but again, on this one I would rotate, texture position, I would rotate it 90 degrees again, so it's vertical, and then use this material, use the Alt on this, and then go ahead and paint the other sides. So now one thing I've done with components is if they have a pattern that becomes very obvious and it shows up in the same orientation on the legs, what you can do is just take one of these legs and rotate using the rotate tool. And now this looks like this, and that looks like that. So in other words, you have it's different pieces of wood with the same component because it's symmetrical. So that can happen. If you find it too obvious, like this is too obvious, maybe this particular pattern, that's one way of resolving that. So you can do that if necessary. Now, if you're doing a rendering like this of this far away, or showing a client a model this far away, it probably doesn't matter at that point. So let's now work on the top. When I went out to take pictures, I took a straight-on picture of the bench, and I probably should have done the same thing with the wood, but that's fine. And I also laid out a ruler to know the size of this repeating pattern. This is a very obvious repeating pattern. And I can see that it's 2 3/4 by 5/8 of an inch. And so that's the size it really is for this pattern, and I can see what the repeat is pretty obviously. So I'm going to try to reduce it to this size of my fabric in Photoshop. So switching to Photoshop, I go File, Open, and then here's my fabric JPEG that I took, look straight down. But you'll notice there is some curvature here, right? And some curvature over here. So I really want to grab right about this middle area, right about here, one of these pieces, right about here, because it is probably going to be the most rectilinear of all the pieces. Here it starts, you can see it starts shrinking up as it goes around this curve. Here it starts shrinking up as it goes around this curve. I mean, it just looks a little different. So I want to zoom in on this area here and try to find a nice rectilinear piece. I'll use a regular crop. I'll make sure there's no numbers up here. So regular crop, make sure there's no numbers. I'm just going to kind of come in and see what I can do here. Probably around this area, I think. So let me get closer to it, and then let's zoom up on that. So I'm going to zoom up here, and I'm just going to again just click and drag this a little closer. All right. So if I want the two tannish spots here, I'll go past these 2 tannish spots here, and then I'll go up a little bit here because I need to see the top of the circle here, tops here. I can see that. That to me looks like a pretty good crop. Right-click crop. So there's this piece here. This piece here is 5/8 by 2 3/4. All right. So let's go File, Save As. I'm going to call it Bench Fabric. And then I'm going to go to SketchUp. I'm going to look up above here. I'm going to go File, Import, and then Bench Fabric as texture, Import. I'll click here, move diagonally, and then I will type 2.75, comma, 5/8. That will put the image down at 2 3/4 and 5/8 inch. And there it is. That is the correct scale on this bench as a texture. I didn't have to do that for the other pieces like the stone or the rock face because they could be all sorts of sizes, right? There's no specific one. But this pattern, if you're going to use this fabric, it's going to look something like this. Once I have it here, I can hold down the paint bucket tool, tap Alt, and then just paint the rest of it. Looks like that. Looks great. So that's fine if you have a fabric you take a picture of, but what if the client found something online? And so the next fabric for this bench is going to be using this one called Growing Wild by Robert Allen. Bamboo is the color they chose. And what you want to do is find the repeat of the fabric. And then you want to make sure you have it the right size. And it tells us there's a horizontal repeat and a vertical repeat. And it tells us this is the size of a swatch that they took a picture of. So this is 36 inches long. This is 27 inches across, okay? So back in Photoshop, we're gonna go open the image, File, Open, and inside the Fabric Project folder, there should be something Growing Wild right here. Click on Open. Now we need to make this image be the same size as noted on the website. So we need to make this image 27 by 36. Then we'll look for the repeat. So if we go to Image, Image Size, let's change it to inches. And it's going to be 36 inches high. And I'm gonna leave that alone. It's gonna be 27.069 because that's where I cropped it from the image that I downloaded from my screen capture. So it'll be okay. It'll be slightly off, but very, very little. It won't make a difference. And so it's a much bigger file now. So in the Photoshop program right now, this is almost like a swatch of fabric. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do Control A to select everything. Make sure I'm in this selection mode right here, but Control A, and then Control C to copy. Or you can do Select All, and then Edit, Copy. You can do it that way too. So, and then what I'll do now is I'm going to create a larger space here where I'm going to actually paste to create 4 elements. What I'm looking for is what is the repeat going on here. All right, so I know what the fabric size is, but what is the repeat? So I'm going to go to Image and then go to Canvas Size. And for the canvas size, I'm going to click in this, instead of the dot in the middle, I'm going to go in this little corner over here. And then for the size, I'm going to select something larger. Again, let's go into inches so I can kind of match things. So maybe, you know, double the width and double the height, let's say. So 60 and then 70. We probably won't need that, but we'll see. And I clicked on here, so I grow out to the left and grow out down. So now I've got this. Yours might be white. It depends on what we have for background. That's fine. Then I'm going to do Control V to paste it. So there it is. And I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to go and zoom up as much as possible. And I'm going to make the opacity, oh, not quite as much, maybe 50% or something like that. And I'm going to put this over this image until I kind of line something up here. So there you go. Now I can see a little bit of lining up going on here. Moving over. Now I'm using my keyboard to kind of line up even better. And now that to me looks like a very good line. I'm looking at, so I have the 2 pieces, right? I basically make the top one 50%, and then the bottom one is solid. So I'm just trying to line things up. I'm going to go ahead and make it all opaque now. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to merge down. Do the same thing again. Control V, paste a new layer, make that new layer 50%. And then move this around where it looks like it's going to match. As you can see right now, it's going to match down in this area. I'll come up and over, and now One thing to be aware of is this part right here may or may not match 100%, like this one does over here. Because why? Because this has already been laid over this. So this is laid over this is laid over this. So we've got some extra things going on. So let's make this 100%. It's pretty good there. And then I'm going to right click, merge down. Control V, last time, 50% last time. We're going to zoom up here, and I'm going to see, there it is. I can always see this flower right here. So, and then once I get close, I'm going to use my keyboard. I find myself, it's basically sliding over almost like a pixel at a time, right? If it gets too blurry, you know you've gone too far. If it still looks good, looks good. And I'm also looking at this flower over here, this flower over here, this flower up in here. They all need to be good. I think it's good. Let's go ahead and make it 100%. And also merge down. I'm going to click around. So I now have a big swath of fabric. There has to be a repeat in here somewhere. So I'm going to go right here and I'm going to right click and flatten image or merge down, either one. Okay. And now I got to take a look and see where do I see this repeat? Where do I see this? Well, I can choose this flower, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I can choose this flower. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can choose this flower. 1, 2. In other words, I just want to select someplace, some point, somewhere on each of the same flowers to select. Perspective crop tool again, and this perspective crop tool will also help me in my if there's any warping going on when I was moving these around. This will straighten things out a little bit, just in case. So I'm going to pick the point of this leaf. I kind of like this leaf point. I'm going to grab and I'm going to say it's right here. Click, and I'm going to go over here and try and pick the same point over here. Click. And then I gotta go take a look, and sure, down here is the piece again. Click. And over here, click. So let me take a look real quickly. Here's that point. I'll move this up a little bit. Click and drag a little bit here. Okay, that's more like it. Over here, yeah, same thing. I have to move and drag this up just a little bit. All right, and over here. The more careful you are with this, the better in the long run. This morning's class, I had to do some extra jiggling around a little bit. Once you think you've got all the pieces, you can right click and crop. So go filter, offset, and see, do I see anything going on here? It looks like it matches pretty darn well. I was being very careful. Let's do this again. Filter, offset. I don't see any strong line anywhere. Oh, is the one here maybe? Oh, there you go. There it is. I was wondering where it was. So there's a little bit of going on here, right? There's a little bit going on here. But it isn't much. I'm not going to bother with it because look at this. I mean, going back this far, I can't see anything. I mean, I don't think I'm going to get close to any fabric. Like the bench, I'm not going to take a picture of a bench this close. So this may actually be more than good enough. And it looks pretty, I keep hitting the offset, the filter offset button. And nothing stands out like there's a line there. And that's what you want to shoot for more than anything else. Now that we've got it cropped and taken care of and make sure that it is indeed seamless, I'm going to go to image size, and see what size it is. We've got 15 by 26 roughly. And I know that the should have been 13.75 by 22. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take off the link. And I'm going to say the width needs to be 13.75. And the height is going to be 22. This is now the exact proportion. Sometimes when you scan something or when you take something from the internet, it sometimes stretches a little bit. So this is exactly the repeat. The repeat's 13.75 by 22, and this is what the image is. Let's go ahead and save it now. Let's go to File, Save a Copy. We'll call it Growing Wild. Make it a JPEG, Growing Wild, cropped. And then let's bring it to the model. So now we're going to bring the file into this bench project. File, Import, and here's our Growing Wild cropped. Make sure you bring in this to texture, Import. I'm going to click, move diagonally, let go of my mouse, and type in 13.75, comma, 22, just like before. And there it is. There's the fabric, the right scale, the right repeat. By the way, we didn't have to resize it in Photoshop. I just thought that would be a way to show you how you could do it there as well. By bringing it in, we could resize it at this point by typing in the exact proportion. Nonetheless, this is the scale of the flower. Use the paint bucket tool, tap the Alt key, click there, and then paint the sides, and there you go. There's a fabric on the bench. So this one, the Très Chic Paris, is an interesting fabric. It is a little different because the repeat isn't quite regular. Now this repeat is very small. It's a 1-inch repeat. And it's hard to kind of line up, but you'll see what we're going to do is we're going to approximate the repeat. In this case, if we really was going to create this piece, we'd have to make, like, to have the repeat work, we'd have to make, I don't know, like 25 or 30 of them. You know, an image that many pieces wide and long, so that we would have a true repeat. But being it's just 1 inch, we're actually going to fudge it up a little bit. We're going to actually slide it just a slight bit and regularize the repeat. But we'll see how we're going to do that. We're going to go to Photoshop, File, Open, go to our folder, find the Très Chic Paris. And just as before, we're going to try and select the corners of the same image. Now, and this one's pretty obvious. The flower wasn't quite as obvious where the repeat is, but this one's pretty obvious. We see this piece there. We see these people here. We have the Arc de Triomphe, the Eiffel Tower. So all those pieces are there. And so I'm just going to use a perspective crop. And I'll make a nice big perspective crop. We're going to go like about here. Right? This is the four corners here. And you'll see what's going to happen. You'll see what's going to happen when we regularize this. But we're going to zoom up on the corners here, and I'm going to go to right where this image kind of laps over like that. So same thing here, right where this image laps over like that. So it goes straight and it goes up a little bit. That's that spot. Down here, the same piece, and then over here, the same piece. So I'm going to move it right to that little fold right there. Okay, so now we've got it here. Right-click, crop, and now this shape is regularized. We'll go image size, and the image size, let's make it pixels. So it's going to be like 400 by 350. All right, so we're going to go to Filter, Other, Offset, and it'll be 400 by 350. And now let's take a look at this and see what's going on. I'm going to zoom here a little bit. Well, it's not too far off, actually. It's a little bit here, right? A little bit here. Sometimes it's more off than others. This one's practically perfect. Nothing wrong with her at all. That's amazing. And the vertical one's right here. So this one we were quite lucky. It seemed to be really close. We've basically regularized this shape. Sometimes it's not going to be quite as clear. That being the case, we still have some pieces we may want to adjust a little bit. Like that dress has a line going through it. We might want to take care of it. So what we'll do, a visual line because of the fabric, right? Fabric has different lightness and darkness to it. I'm gonna go ahead and use the clone stamp tool, and we'll zoom up. I'm gonna click right here. And I'll go back over to this one, and I'll just click and drag down. And there you go. I fixed it. There's no line there visible on board. I'm not going to worry about the background quite yet. The cloth, the same thing. I will go ahead and pick like this area right here. Go over here. Go back to this area, the same spot of the clock, and just kind of go around. See how I'm just straightening it all out? There was a little line there, a little bend. I'm just going to straighten it all out. So this clock is complete. This is not broken in half. This one is a clock on the edge, and so by doing this, I kind of lined it back up and aligned it just fine. This one here for the Arc de Triomphe, I think looks pretty good. Let's see here. Oh, like right this area right here. See this area right in here? I think we should do something about that. So I'm gonna wait a little bit there. I'm gonna go this. I think I need to have a more full image of this Arc de Triomphe here. Like I've got a bottom down here, a side here, but if I'm going to fix this element, I think I'm going to need to slide some things over. Before I do so, let me see. Okay, it might be good for her. So I'll go to Filter, Other, Offset, and I'm going to put this to the side, and I'm just going to slide this over a little bit. Okay, so that gives me a full Arc de Triomphe. No, this gives me a full arc. This is the full one. I can see the line right here. And I can see a full person here. So that's perfect. I can now use this image to help over here. Let's go vertical. Let's do that for now. That'll give me this piece here to work. This is the real one, a complete. Here's the real person. Here's the person's got the line kind of slightly through it. She's complete. This is the complete handbag, so I think I've got the pieces I need. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. So I did this. I went Filter, Other, Offset. I just clicked and dragged the amount until I had a full figure that was not distorted, and then I could use that help the ones that are slightly distorted or the colors aren't quite right. So now I'm just going to use the clone stamp tool and then select a point there and basically repaint the whole thing. Just go in there and repaint the whole thing. And then it'll be perfectly fine. Because it's the same image, right? So this is the same image repeated over and over again. So I'm just, by doing this, I'm cleaning up the whole image altogether. And then I'm going to do the same thing here for this piece. And then any sort of irregularities are going to be gone. Again, this particular example worked out very, very, very well. Sometimes you'll get a little bit more variation on these. Get her hat here and come over here, and then see, this is the one with a slight line. You can kind of see that line right here. So just gonna go get her back in here again, and it'll be just fine. And then I know that there won't be any seams here either. In other words, there's no obvious seams anywhere now. Good deal. I think we've got everything we've taken care of. Now I want to focus a little bit on the background because some of it is a little darker than others, and there's a kind of a little technique we can use to make it all evened out. So I'm going to go ahead and select a color to keep. So I'm going to take a look at this area here and then use the color picker. So I just click on the color and then color picker and pick a color I want to keep. Like let's say I think that's going to be the tan and what I want to keep on my project. All right, we're going to say that color here, whatever that color is what we're going to want. And then I'm going to use select color range, and I will pick that background area. Notice how all this turned white. I picked over here. Notice how all that turned white. And I want to have the variation be not so much. I don't want to have all of it taken up. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit because I do want some variation in the background, but it doesn't need to be much at all. All right, so we got that. And I think that about 20 or so, I think, is what I've done in the past. That seems to be pretty good. It gets enough that it blends pretty well. And if I want to, I can use this plus and click some other areas too, so I can get a little bit more variation. Click OK. And now those areas are selected. See how they're all selected back here? And because this is a background, when I hit the delete key on the keyboard, it's going to ask me what I want to replace it with. A foreground, a background, content aware. So I'm going to select foreground because that is the color on the front. If I had picked the back color, it would have been the background color. I'll click OK. And then select, deselect, or hit Control D on your keyboard. And now we have a more even tone throughout the whole background. And I still think it looks very much like the original, even though we regularized it. We're going to go File, Save As, and we're going to save it as Très Chic Paris, and we're going to call it 2. We're going to use a slightly different technique to bring this into the model. You may have noticed that we never looked at the original size or even resized this image to be the real size of the fabric. So how are we going to get that onto the model now? We only have pixels, even though it is all seamless. So if you noticed before, on the swatch that we had from the manufacturer, from the website, it's a 29-inch by 29-inch swatch of fabric. That's the original fabric, right? So I'm going to go here and make a rectangle on the side of this, 29 by 29. So I'm using basically that rectangle as the real fabric. I'm going to select it, M for move, and I'll click down here, click. I'm going to go up in the blue, so I'll lock it in the blue. So I'm putting my cursor on top of the bench. So now we are in line with the top of the bench. File, import. I'm going to go to get the original Très Chic Paris fabric. And I'll click here, click, and I'll go up to here, click. Right, that's the rectangle that we got from the web page. And that's the size that it is. I'm going to move it a little closer to the bench. I don't want to touch the bench because I don't want it to kind of glue up with the bench. And now I'm going to do this, File, Import. And now this time I will do this Très Chic Paris 2, Import. I'll just click and drag and click. Okay. So now I've got some image here and I've got this image. This image is the correct scale. So I select on this, right click, and I can't do texture position here. Why is that? Well, we can't do texture position because I've softened this edge. We didn't have to worry about it before because when we're putting this in, we're sizing the image as we put it in. But now I need to size the image. And so how do I do that when you have a softened edge? Well, if you go to View, Hidden Geometry, now the edge is no longer softened, or at least you can see the edge. So now I can right click on this, texture position. And so now what I want to do is get the texture close to, like over here, close to an image on the real size one. And then use the green positioning tool to resize this to be about the same size. So I was going to be kind of playing around a little bit back and forth. And once we get one image to match the same image on this example fabric, then we're close enough. So I'm just kind of playing around with this on the side. And so as you can see now we've got this about the right size, right? We're kind of lined up about the right size. It's never going to be perfect because why? We regularized the pattern. So it's not going to be perfectly the same. But you can see what's happening as we go down. This is already shifted, right? This one lines up pretty well. But when you get down here, it's already shifted. And this person shifted. And this one. And so the further we go out, the more the change happens. So if we really had to be exact, then that would have been, that would be an issue. Okay, right click, done. And now this is the correct size. I mean, scale wise, you're going to see about that many Eiffel Towers on this bench, whether it's a 1-inch offset or not. Hit the rest of the fabric area, and then there it is. Now we can get rid of this. Now again, and go to View, take off in geometry, and here's our bench. Perfectly done. And now, since we put in all these fabric textures in here, we really should go to Window, Model Info, Statistics, and Purge Unused, and get rid of all those extra textures. So, because we put so many textures on here, one after the other after the other. All right, let's go File, Open, and let's go to drapery.skp. It's inside the fabric project. So we have the bench, we also have drapery. You can save this if you want. If you don't want to, that's fine. So in this project, we're going to actually put some of this fabric onto curved surfaces or wavy surfaces. These are simple shapes. This one's more complex. If you go to View, Hidden Geometry, you can see the difference between this pattern and this one, the way that it's designed. This is kind of triangulated. Gives you more realistic curves. Go to View, Hidden Geometry, take that off. So these are components at the top of the fabric, and this is the right scale for the Très Chic Paris. And these in the bottom are also components. So I'm going to use my paint bucket tool. Hold down the Alt key, select the material, and I'll paint. Now, first of all, we're not painting the actual model below. We're painting the component, the whole component. And you can see that this doesn't work very well, painting it like this. It just doesn't seem to be very good. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to double click to go inside the component, and then I'm going to paint. You can see that's a much better situation. This fabric up here, if you right click texture, you can see that it is a projected fabric onto this. So as I pick it up with the paint bucket tool, I will project it onto other surfaces. Now, looking closely, however, you can see that some things get warped out. And this really would not be the number of Eiffel Towers you'd see. You'd see quite a bit more because the fabric is curling back and forth in that situation. So let's undo that a second. So select the component. What I'll do is I'm going to stretch the component out. So right now we've got the waviness here. So I'm going to do the scale tool, and I will sketch it out. I'll stretch it out 2 times, so twice as long. Now, even though there's some curves, there's a lot more smoothness to it. It's more straight. And then I will then use my paint bucket tool and go into the component. I double click inside and paint it. You can see there's still a little bit of issues at the curve, but because we stretched it out, it's not quite as dramatic. And so now I can select it, scale tool again, go to the middle, red, scale about opposite point, click, and go in, type 0.5, and that's the original. So we did twice as long, 2 times out, 0.5 in, and you can see there's a lot more Eiffel Towers, right, than we had before. Before we'd have 1, 2, 3, now we have quite a bit more. And this is probably more like it. Again, if you zoom up, you'll see there are some irregularities still, but it's not quite the same. It's not quite as bad. We can do it a different way now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fabric and go half the distance, 0.5, and then I will use the paint bucket tool, double click inside this, and paint it as well. So now, similar kind of effect. You're still going to get some funny things going on, but again, the overall look and the number of Eiffel Towers is probably what you would see if this was a curtain made for that material. This one's a little bit trickier, but we're going to use a similar technique that we did over here. We're going to take this, scale it, and I will basically line it up with this fabric down here. In other words, it's going to be a lot tighter than these other ones. I'm just going to line it up with this fabric. Use the paint bucket tool, double click, and then paint this surface. For this top piece, I'm going to go ahead and use Move and tap the Control key to make a copy and scale this even further tight. And I will go ahead and use the paint bucket tool here. So this is even tighter. I just kind of made it really tight because this fabric here is really tight up. Make sure to keep clicking until you finally get to the actual surface of the model and not paint just the component. There are several components in this one. And so there you go. So there's the fabric there. It looks okay. This is the same component mirrored over here, so it got this done as well. However, this really wouldn't be what the fabric would look like. Let's take a look here a second. Notice how the Eiffel Tower is kind of angling this way. It's angling from right to left, sort of. But here, it's angling from left to right. That's because this is a mirror of this component. Well, the fabric wouldn't be able to do that. You'd have to always have the fabric going the right way. So if there's a particular look, or if you're careful, if you want to be very careful about your model, you got to think the way this thing out. So I will go ahead and I will select the component, right click, make unique. So now this is a unique component and I can pattern however I wish. I'm gonna go ahead and use the paint bucket tool, tap the Alt key, pick up this surface, double click to go inside here and paint it off. So now this is really how this curtain would be, with the Eiffel Towers both angling in the same direction, because that's how the fabric is. So 3 different ways to be able to resize fabric onto curved surfaces such as drapery. Whichever one you use, however, make sure you go inside the component to get the best results. So having good materials in your models is essential. And here's some links here. There'll be some links in the project folder. And even Twilight Forums have a section on materials and resources that you could use, which is great. Now, not everything's 100% seamless, but you can make things seamless by using the techniques of this class. The Kaleidoscope PDF and Fill Pattern PDF in the folder shows how you can create a pattern from an image. So this is perhaps if you want to design a unique pattern, they'll show you how you can do that. And you have a kaleidoscope pattern here, and then how you can use that kaleidoscope pattern to create a larger pattern as well in Photoshop. The lecture portion covering seamless textures is completed now, and you can turn your attention to the assignment in the module.